It's the Opperman Report. And now, here is investigator Ed Opperman.
Okay, welcome to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, Private Investigator Ed Opperman. You could find me at Opperman Investigations and Digital Forensic Consulting through my website, emailrevealer.com. Just reach me directly at oppermaninvestigations@gmail.com. Very excited about our guest today, Matthew Phelan. I've known Matthew Phelan for quite a time. You can find him on Twitter at CBMDP, and that stands for Comic Book Matthew Dominic Phelan. Phelan is with a P. Well, you know, that really didn't help it, but CBMDP. Okay. And his name on there is Sup with a question mark, Matthew Phelan at Big Sky. Social. Hey, Matthew, I got to follow you on Big Sky, man. I'm on Big Sky, man.
I'm trying to do my slow migration into, the Twitter diaspora.
That's a good idea. I'll put mine in there too as well because I think I have like 2 followers on the Big Sky, which is the Jack Dorsey. Yeah, Jack Dorsey's. New...
I don't think is it a Jack Dorsey? I have not the slightest clue. I know that Threads is the Facebook Meta attempt.
Right.
Mastodon is this cornball open source decentralized thing that it's full of nerds doing Robert's Rules of Order type stuff where it's
really?
simply
Well, we've already stumped Matthew Phelan about his Big Sky involvement there and Jack Dorsey. But before we get into the next topic,
I deny any knowledge.
Okay, you can take the fifth.
No
you can
comment.
take the fifth on the Opperman Report. It's been done before. We're going to be talking today about James O'Keefe and Project Veritas and all the scandal going on over there. But before we get to that, who is Matthew Phelan?
Oh, let's see. So I'm a former chemical engineer and now a journalist. My first job out of school was doing lithium-ion battery research and development for a DARPA contractor. It was a South Korean company, and I lost at ping pong every day at lunch until I left. And I've written for The Nation and Scientific American and Reuters Health, and back in the day, Gawker, rest in peace, and a handful of other places over the years. Quite a few of them about the topic of today's show.
So basically, an ex-DARPA-funded journalist who I went Slate, New Republic, Gawker, and other topics. Okay, so Matthew Phelan.
Highly, nothing suspicious about that. Fan base of this program. Do not read into that too heavily.
Yeah, please. I got enough headaches, man. Okay, so Matthew Phelan, I know there's a lot of stuff in the news right now going on about James O'Keefe, who was such a character. This guy's been getting away with murder all this time. And what's that called again?
Project Veritas?
Yeah, Project Veritas, right. Who they get so much...
Latin for truth.
Right, and they get so much funding dumped on their head. They were getting funding from Cambridge Analytica, from what I understand. Where do you want to start? Who is James O'Keefe, or what was Project Veritas?
Let's see.
Let's start with O'Keefe.
Yeah, let's start with O'Keefe. O'Keefe is in a way a byproduct of the campus Republican machine. He was trained by a guy named Ben Wetmore, who worked at the Leadership Institute in the tricks of the trade for founding a noisy, annoying right-wing magazine on campus, which he did. It was called the Rutgers Centurion. My co-writer on a lot of these Project Veritas stories, Liz Farkas, was a very brief contributor to the Rutgers Centurion before she found God and moved on. And O'Keefe kind of he figured out a way to make YouTube work for far-right dirty tricksters. He quite famously, in his own mind especially, did this prank where he went to some bureaucrat at Rutgers University and told them that as an Irish American, he found the Lucky Charms cereal at the cafeteria offensive, and that it depicted Irish folks as diminutive, green-clad hucksters, etc. It's like a bit that would be very funny if Conan O'Brien had done it without some sort of like race grievance undertone.
Yeah.
And he continued to do those sorts of things after graduation. In fact, taking a job at the Leadership Institute, training other campus conservatives in the tactics of engaging in that kind of bullshit.
Watch your language. Let me ask a quick question, right?
Yeah. Sorry about that.
Now, one of the first things I recall about Project Veritas was that operation they pulled against Acorn in Las Vegas. Now, at that time, before they were targeted by Project Veritas with undercover video operatives entering in there and dealing with these low-level volunteers and really nobodies, Acorn was the only organization that would show up at the Nevada Power Energy Commission meetings and protest the raise in rate hikes, and especially for the elderly. And they had all these things put into place. Now, so before Warren Buffett could go in there and buy Nevada Energy, they had to get rid of Acorn. Any indications that O'Keefe and Project Veritas at that time was funded through Warren Buffett or a shell company, Buffett Front?
Well, the first major scoop that Liz and I had on O'Keefe was related to how the Acorn videos were funded. And essentially what happened there is O'Keefe and Hannah Giles did the East Coast videos on spec. They went to Baltimore, D.C., and possibly New York, I think, and had packaged some of those and started shopping them around. And when Andrew Breitbart saw them, formerly a guy who worked for Matt Drudge and then created Breitbart.com, and he launched his sort of big government blog on the back of the success of these Acorn hidden camera stings. He put up money for both O'Keefe and Hannah Giles' life rights and future work product, and funded their West Coast hidden camera airsats, quote-unquote, investigations in the California offices and elsewhere.
Gotcha.
And so that was about, I think O'Keefe got $60K, and Hannah Giles was promised some money and made less money, partially because she kind of stopped wasting her time and started doing other stuff. She made $32K all told from Andrew Breitbart during that period.
Really?
Keith made 65.
Peanuts, yeah, peanuts when you consider, taking down Acorn, right?
Yeah, I mean, they effectively dissolved that, nationwide network of community organizing groups that did great get out the vote efforts, and underprivileged communities probably registered, millions of people to vote who were having trouble figuring out because they have busy lives and were struggling. That specific kind of investigation has been like a perennial moneymaker and focus for Project Veritas, finding ways to disenfranchise people from the working class and lower who have a slightly, persnickety or inconvenient tendency to vote for Democratic Party politicians.
Now, what about, just from memory, there was another incident where they went into a representative's office and tried to, they called themselves phone repairmen, which is as sloppy as you can get, and with no consequences.
were some consequences. So this was in early 2010, just high on the wave of the success of the Acorn stings. O'Keefe and some Confederates, including a guy named Joe Basil, who went on to marry Hannah Giles, Stan Dye, and some other folks. They infiltrated the offices of Louisiana Senator Mary Landrieu. And two of them were dressed as telephone repairmen. O'Keefe was posing as a constituent or as himself and trying to secretly tape his friends. And the kind of ironic thing about this is that it was a perfect circle of conservative misinformation. What O'Keefe and everyone involved was trying to do was produce a stunt based on the claim that conservatives in Louisiana were trying to call Senator Landrieu to complain about her support of Obamacare and voting for the passage of the AMA. And the reason that those constituents, if they were having trouble reaching Senator Mary Landrieu, is that another conservative group had put her phone number everywhere and was saying, melt the phone lines. That was like the ad and the push on these other conservative blogs. So O'Keefe was simply proving in a way that these other conservatives had successfully astroturfed the phone lines. But his expectation was to go in there proving that they were ignoring the constituents because they ignore conservatives.
Well, let me ask you a question, though, because wiretapping's pretty serious charges. Why would they risk those kind of criminal charges in such a sloppy operation over such a minor win?
What's the quote from All the President's Men? You got to understand that these are not very bright guys. Things got out of hand.
Okay.
But
I thought the quote was Modine is available tonight. Okay, good.
That's another one.
I cracked myself up. Go ahead.
That's the Jim Hogan Secret Agenda version, or like the Let's see.
Where were we?
The federal charges were officially entering like a federal building under false pretenses.
Oh, really?
And O'Keefe pled down to a misdemeanor, and he was put on a very unique kind of probation where he was not allowed to leave the state of New Jersey without permission for 3 years. Oh. And he had some like community service and some other stuff. So he was grounded. He was grounded by court order, and he lived with his parents for 3 years in Westwood, New Jersey. And
Westwood, New Jersey. Okay, but now I'm curious too. But do we know if he did leave? Because it's very simple to get permission from your PO to leave, right?
Yeah, he would routinely request it because he was still raising money for Project Veritas, and he was operating Project Veritas out of a remodeled antique carriage house in his parents' property somewhere.
And this bunch with this black bag job with the wiretap, and one of their relatives was like a federal judge or something like that.
Yeah, I can't remember that kid's name because he did not stick around in the operation, but perhaps it will come to me.
Well, but either way, this is all early on stuff. Now what about when I heard that Cambridge Analytica was dropping tons of money on top of Project Veritas? Are we able to confirm that, or am I off base on that?
Bannon was involved.
Okay,
at the very least.
Yeah.
There's a phase in 2016 where James O'Keefe partners with former Blackwater CEO Erik Prince to start training their undercover operatives in a wider array of, intelligence tradecraft for infiltrating, such nefarious groups as teachers' unions and Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders campaigns for the Democratic presidential ticket and that sort of thing. And during that period, Prince and Bannon started entertaining a scheme where they were lobbying the government of Qatar to use Project Veritas to investigate foreign laborers working on building the stadiums and the other facilities for the 2022 FIFA World Cup. And so the idea was that Project Veritas was going to infiltrate these communities of foreign laborers and, find the agitators who were attempting to maybe unionize or get some rights or, so stir up some trouble.
James O'Keefe and Project Veritas were going to be used as overseas foreign intelligence agents for a foreign government. When you say it that way, it doesn't sound so good, right?
Right. It sounds quite bad.
Yeah.
I don't know if this scheme actually got off the ground. Certainly, the videos did not materialize. But
now, at that time, how many guys did O'Keefe have working for him to make him even qualified for that kind of a job?
Well, here's what I can say: is that at the beginning of the Trump years, the money that Project Veritas was pulling in was somewhere around $3 million.
Right.
And by the end of the Trump years in 2020, it was somewhere around $22 million. They haven't filed some of the more recent tax forms yet, or at least they're not public. But from what I understand, the high watermark a year or two ago was $24 million, and it started cresting and going downhill from there. That dip from the heights of $24 million back down to 22 and lower was one of the things that precipitated the chaos that is.
Yeah, that we're going to be getting into. Today, because it's a shambles of its once a noble self. Okay, its once legendary self. Now, but the thing is now, when he did have this peak of like 22 million cash, were they now hiring like professional type operatives, undercover specialists, with people that kind of training, or were they still hiring these kids out of college, these Republican volunteers and interns?
Short answer is a mixture of both. At some point during the Erik Prince years, they brought on a former MI6 agent named Richard Seddon, who lives out, I believe, in like Wyoming or something these days, and is kind of a washout with a bit of a checkered history in Central Asia, from what I understand. I actually bugged the reporter friend who knew him because I was hoping to actually have more to tell you guys. But that guy and a pile of sort of Erik Prince's mercenary pals did give the same old kind of like young, weird college Republican freaks and geeks training and like evading tails and like sticking to your legend when you're being interrogated, and a variety of other, OPSEC tutorials. One of the documents that we obtained for some stories we did during 2020, during the 2020 election cycle, was some like undercover training they would do in Mamaroneck, New York, this like small commuter town north of Manhattan. The fake operation was called Operation Scratchy, and they'd have people go in with hidden cameras and ask a bunch of questions of like the local dry cleaners and stuff in town to get a sense if their people could, hold it together while being deceptive in a public forum.
Right. Now, do we know why they chose Mamaroneck, Long Island, or Mamaroneck, New York?
Mamaroneck, New York.
Okay. Did they have local police allies there, or local politicians allies there?
I am told that they did.
Yes.
I'm told that their landlord was friends with the local police. And I would say I have like 99.9% confidence in that from as I've chased that down, but I couldn't tell you who the exact member of the police was, which, made going up there to report on this stuff surreptitiously a little nerve-wracking, but, it was fine.
Yeah,
and they're probably going to lose the office anyway. From what I understand, they've laid off everybody. Not to spoiler alert, I guess. Practically over 24 people have been laid off. There's like a skeleton crew of 3 IT guys and like 1 video production guy and maybe a couple other staffers at the moment.
Yeah, and it appears O'Keefe himself is still trying to do these operations from a van. He's got a van. He's got what's going on with that?
Before he even officially tendered his resignation to Project Veritas, he founded a for-profit LLC called Transparency One LLC. And he started telling all of the big money donors of Project Veritas that the organization had been co-opted and bought off by Pfizer executives because of their amazing Pfizer sting related to the vaccine production. And, that's a whole mess. But he brought a lot of those donors along. So he's running a for-profit spin-off equivalent knockoff of Project Veritas that he calls O'Keefe Media Group, or OMG for short. And,
what a interesting guy. No, but so you're saying that Project Veritas there was some kind of 5013C?
Yeah, it was a tax deductible charity. Yeah, Project Veritas applied for tax deductible status in 2010, and it got it in 2011.
And yet somehow they're flirting with this overseas Qatar deal to do espionage over there.
I know.
What the hell's going on here?
Folks with subpoena power, if you're listening and have subpoena power, you should look into this. They've skirted the bounds of what you can get away with. They also created a 501c4 called Project Veritas Action, which is essential for the kind of highly partisan but ostensibly impartial work that they were doing. They could not attack a candidate or advocate for a certain candidate from the 501c3. So they had to create a wholly separate legal entity. And pretty much everyone had just had like 2 emails. You know what I mean? There wasn't a separate Project Veritas Action building like in Rye, New York, next to Mamaroneck or something. It was all the same people. But it was a legal formality that allowed them to engage in, much more aggressive political stuff.
So was that for-profit or that was also nonprofit?
That's also nonprofit.
Where did all this money go? If they're making $22 million a year for more than 1 year, where's all that money going? It's not for videotaping these operations. Where's that money go?
Yeah, they did have a fairly large staff at one point that might have been upward in like the 70 or 80 head count. But you are correct. A lot of this money went towards, absolute nonsense. So when the board of directors at Project Veritas put O'Keefe on paid administrative leave while they looked at the books and attempted to, drag Veritas into compliance with federal nonprofit law, O'Keefe quit in February in a huff, saying, like, I am out of, they won't let me do what I want to do. They're preventing us from our glorious mission of bringing truth and exposing waste, fraud, and corruption by the Biden crime family or whatever. And then the board released a preliminary list of the self-indulgent expenses that O'Keefe was responsible for. And it included a $14,000 charter flight to meet someone to fix his sailboat under the guise of meeting with a donor. He spent over $150,000 on high-end limo services and black cars. And just to provide a sense of what that means.
Model services, you said?
No. Limo.
Okay,
limo
okay,
services.
gotcha. Okay, auto services.
He would get like a Uber XL, so like a giant SUV or something, and rather than like just have it drop him off at a restaurant, he would treat the guy like it was his personal Jeeves or something, and be like, "You wait here. You find a place to park and you hang out." And so he'd rack up like a $500 Uber bill just to go eat someplace, or just like meet, a potential operative or donor or something for coffee. From what I understand, pretty much like every meal he had was on the Project Veritas card, and he would fight with the chief financial officer and claim that every single one of those was like a business meeting. And he spent $60,000, according to the board, on dance events, which included a semi-autobiographical pop music celebration of his life in Las Vegas, performed in Las Vegas, called the Project Veritas Experience. It did not translate into a residency. It was a fairly short-lived episode.
Wait, he was putting on dance events in Las Vegas for the Project Veritas employees, I suppose, or possible donors?
I think he did this event also at a new college Republican thing for, Turning Point USA also.
Really?
Charlie Kirk's group, I think.
And were these actual dance events, but dance presentations, or was something more nefarious going on with dancers in Vegas?
No, well, there's always something. He sincerely is a byproduct of high school musical theater.
Right.
Like there's a parallel universe where James O'Keefe, rather than becoming famous in his late teens and early 20s for these like conservative gotcha hidden camera videos, where O'Keefe got famous for, inventing some sort of dance routine. And he's just like a YouTube influencer, like a Logan Paul or whatever. But regrettably, we live in this timeline where he has become sort of, millennial Roger Stone at some point.
Now, so this $22 million that they had for making for more than 1 year, I don't know how long they've been in operation for. It seems like a long part of my life. All that money now is all gone. It's been squandered.
From what I understand, yeah.
Okay.
My co-reporter and I are actively chasing some rumors about where some of that money went.
Okay.
It speaks to the wider, claims made by the board and allegedly being investigated now by, New York State prosecutors in Westchester County, of self-dealing, financial malfeasance, but what is technically known under IRS law as inurement. And what inurement means is if you run a nonprofit charitable organization, you can't lavish upon yourself ridiculous salaries, ridiculous, expenditures that are simply personal enrichment with tax-deductible donations. And the accusations by the board and the accusations that I understand are being investigated now by the Westchester County DA relate to exactly that kind of spending by Mr. O'Keefe, James O'Keefe III.
Okay, now the two entities right now, first of all, is Project Veritas. Are they still doing any kind of investigations, any kind of operations, anything?
They were for a while. They went after Eric Adams, New York City mayor, for something that I didn't quite, I confess I don't fully understand. And they released some trove of documents related to China that I skimmed an article in Gateway Pundit about it that happened to be written by Ben Wetmore, who's been brought back into the Project Veritas orbit to help Hannah Giles try and run the place.
And who's that?
Ben Wetmore is the guy who trained O'Keefe in how to create a conservative campus publication back in 2003-ish, 2004-ish at Rutgers.
Okay, and what about now O'Keefe now, his little van and what he's doing? Is he putting out any material?
Yeah. The first thing that he did with O'Keefe Media Group was ostensibly find a bunch of people who had donated to Act Blue who claim they don't remember being donated, who claim that they don't remember donating to Act Blue. And so I think the premise of that piece, what O'Keefe wants you to believe, but since we don't have unedited versions of this material, we can't really assess it for ourselves, is that, some wealthy and sinister Democrats, a la George Soros or whatever, are pretending, are funneling money through fake automated mom and pop donations into an organization like Act Blue. So he did some videos where he would knock on the doors of people and say, like, it says here that you donated to Act Blue. Do you remember donating to Act Blue? And some elderly person whose face is pixelated says they can't remember. Explosive stuff.
Yeah. And it's so easy, too, to fudge all that kind of stuff because you have... like with the 2000 election down in Florida where they scrubbed the voter rolls. People, the guy's name is John W. Smith, and they got, Smith John W.
Right.
Yeah. And
all of these felons who have a name like Jackson.
Right.
Some Karl Rove type guy said, like, we want to make sure that every, like, Ron Jackson who exists in Florida is treated like this one felon, Ron Jackson, who's been denied the right to vote. And I believe, this is like Greg Palast's great reporting on this. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I've done a lot of reporting on it because I knew those guys, TLO and stuff that and IRB Search, who got together and created that company to do the database scrubbing. And it came out in all the PI magazines. Hey, what's this new company it's going to be? Oh, how can we sign up? And they had to come out and say, oh no, this is just for one job we're doing, to scrub the election rolls. And the guy in charge of one of these companies was like a former smuggler and stuff like that. Hank Asher, who was buddies with John Walsh. Hank Asher owned these private planes. He was a cocaine smuggler by history, and then created all these database companies that were so cheap. We've done plenty of shows about that too. I think we talked to Greg Palast about that too as well. You mentioned some other things about. Did we cover everything about Blackwater and Prince?
Not necessarily. There was a moment when Erik Prince flew out James O'Keefe and a bunch of his undercover operatives, or they used the term UCJs for undercover journalists.
Oh, really?
Yeah. There was a lot of interesting code name, sort of hokey kids clubhouse, super secret squirrel stuff going on inside the organization. They all had code names. The operatives had code names and were referred to by code names via email. And the various investigations also had code names. So in 2020 and 2019, the investigation into the attempts to infiltrate all of the Democratic Party primary candidates' volunteer campaigns was called Gold Mine. And everybody who did one of those had a name like Heisenberg or Lefty or Jitsu or something that they would use in emails and texts and things because they were afraid of being infiltrated. With good reason, because they infiltrated them. But
it's not like they have opposition like the Democratic Party has these private intelligence groups too working, like Stone and these characters. They really don't, not to this level.
Yeah.
Now, where were this charter? Where were they incorporated? Like what state?
I think they initially were incorporated in Virginia, but
really?
they're officially based in New York. They're as a charity.
As a charity of journalists, as a charity of journalists.
Yeah, it's a journalism nonprofit. I mean, like ProPublica is a nonprofit.
Really?
There's a great many institutions these days that do tax deductible journalism work, and to a degree, thank God, because the for-profit system of newspaper and magazine reporting in the United States is no secret. It's been hurting for decades, and a lot of like the big scoops that have come out related to Clarence Thomas and all the money he got from Harlan Crow and the beautiful, sumptuous vacations. That's all nonprofit reporting done by ProPublica. And
hey, do you know the story about Harlan Crow's brother?
No. Did he collect Nazi memorabilia as well?
Oh, dude. There's a whole... You got to look this up, man. I did a whole show about it. There's a whole litigation. There's a lawsuit against him for sex trafficking by this woman, and it includes the local cops, strip clubs. There's this really shady Airbnb, if you look up the reviews about it online, where they're charging like $700 a night to go stay at this little shady Airbnb. And this looks like a really serious, legit lawsuit. They named the cop. It's not like, and the whole police department. They're naming specific people in this lawsuit against his brother. And his brother offered to let Prince Andrew and Fergie live with him. When they were beginning. Wow. Yeah. No one talks about it. You know how these things are.
That sounds quite juicy. Yeah,
one wild man screaming in the middle of the night, and no one listens to me. That's great info, man.
Well, I mean, I'm an opera fan. I'm a routine listener of the show. Yeah. I haven't bought Pure Soap Flakes, but I'm a fan of the show.
I know. Also, too, Andrew Lowney, who wrote all those great books on Mountbatten. He's been on the show a couple of times, and he's writing a book now about Prince Andrew. Well, he's no longer the formerly known as Prince Andrew of York. And I sent him all this information too. He's freaking out. He loves it, man. And so we talked about Blackwater. We talked about Prince. What about now Roman? This character. Now Roman was indicted in Georgia, right?
Yeah. He got his mugshot on Friday. There was a long period of time where there wasn't a lot of photos of him out there. I spoke to him on the phone in 2010, February of 2010, because I had gotten some internal emails related to O'Keefe back then. O'Keefe was planning to mess around in the Coakley race. So similarly more like election paranoia. During the Brown-Coakley Senate race in Massachusetts, James O'Keefe was going to try to expose sinister busing by the Democrats. That the Democrats were picking up, illegal immigrants or something and driving them to the polls with, risking, many years of jail time to
well, I got to tell you something, man. I could
stuff votes by hand.
They should have contacted me in 2015. I could have testified. When you went outside the caucus in Nevada and you drove around that parking lot, there were tons of California plates. And when you went into that caucus, these are supposed to be people in your neighborhood. I know everybody in my neighborhood. I was a well-known guy. I didn't recognize one person in that classroom. One guy in there knew me, or I knew them. So, and then there was all kind of shady stuff went on in Nevada with the Bernie caucus and Hillary. So, if only James O'Keefe would have,
I can believe that.
Yeah, if only James O'Keefe would have contacted me. So, how is Roman?
James O'Keefe cares.
Well, yeah,
about Bernie Sanders.
Yeah. So, how is Roman now connected to all this? What's he up to?
So, just a small bit of backstory is that Mike Roman was a private investigator based in Philadelphia. And if you remember during Obama's first election, this sort of like scare tactic, conservative moment about the new Black Panthers hanging out of some polls.
Yeah.
Mike Roman is responsible for that. He's the guy who videotaped that, and he found some old white ladies who felt intimidated by these folks existing near the polls. And O'Keefe, back in the day, had gotten in touch with Mike Roman for help doing this Brown-Coakley race undercover operation that ultimately didn't go anywhere. Probably to some degree because of him copping to misdemeanor charges for sneaking into Senator Mary Landrieu's office in New Orleans. But Mike Roman, after this sort of, collaborative era with O'Keefe, started working as like a political intelligence mastermind for the Koch brothers. And during 2020 was being paid by the Republican Party and by the Trump campaign to work on, their massive effort to demonize mail-in ballots and, explore and promote claims of election fraud against President Trump and the movement to make America great once again. And that has now gotten Mike Roman in, RICO trouble in Georgia because he was instrumental in organizing the false electors and things like that. From what I understand, I've not fully had time to read the entire charge.
Yeah, he appears to be unindicted too in the D.C. case, and I believe there's more cases coming. What do you think?
I think so. I think almost every U.S. state that had some of these false electors, rustled up, could probably put together like some sort of similar case. And
Arizona gave the green light, and Nevada said no, and Michigan has their own case up there. They didn't mention people like Trump, but they've got their own. The electors themselves are in the hot seat, and so it seems like there's more going on. I think even Alex Jones and people like that could ultimately face some problems. Leonard, now we're running toward the end. We've got less than 10 minutes. Leonard Leo, or you said you had something juicy, maybe you want to sneak in. You don't want me to know. You are holding back from the Opera Report audience. People know where to find you, Matthew Phelan. What do you say, man? What else you got for us in the last 9 minutes? Leonard Leo?
Leonard Leo, who was, I believe, a co-founder. He was a co-chairman and formerly the executive vice president of the Federalist Society, one of the major sort of legal groups in the Republican Party that has groomed judges and recommended judicial appointments. Is as of this week supposedly being investigated by the Washington D.C. Attorney General Brian Schwab. And Leonard Leo was part of the same network of folks in 2020 alongside O'Keefe, working on this, massive voter suppression operation. He had renamed a company, a nonprofit that was formerly called the Judicial Education Project, to the Honest Elections Project, and using that to funnel money and help support lawsuits that were ostensibly election integrity cases pursued by this litigator, William Consovoy. So they brought a case in Florida to, petition against reenfranchising felons. They tried to block California's plans to deliver absentee ballots to all of the state's registered voters, and filed other motions in Pennsylvania and Wisconsin and Nevada, and basically battleground states that were up in the air in an effort to keep people from getting their chance to go to the polls.
And which is so odd, because down in Florida, it appears like a lot of the felons are Republican.
I mean, make a compelling point there that there's a lot of quote unquote Florida men, Florida women, from many famous wire stories, fighting off alligators or losing cocaine to alligators, that kind of thing.
Oh, yeah, the mayor of St. Pete just found some cocaine the other day, washed up on the show. It's a crazy town, man. And I interviewed the woman who made the documentary about the Florida woman who has that alligator pet in her home there in Lakeland, Florida, in this big tank in her one of her bedrooms. And I says, what was the smell like over there? But I can get us a tour of that, man, if you ever come down this way, Matthew Phelan. What else are you working on besides James O'Keefe? We covered pretty much everything on James O'Keefe. Anything I didn't ask you want to tell us about?
I can move on from James O'Keefe. It's overwhelming. There's plenty of other stuff, probably.
We got 4 minutes.
Yeah. I can't think of a single thing on James O'Keefe.
Let me ask you this, Matthew Phelan. What else are you working on? I know you got a million projects in the works. What else?
That is true.
Yeah.
Aside from any collaborative efforts that we may or may not be involved in, I've been 2 years into producing a narrative documentary-style podcast about UFOs and the recent public, government interest in UFOs. That's been swelling since 2017 when the New York Times did their stories. I had sort of a scoop on this back in 2019 for New York Magazine. I got the Navy fighter pilot weapons systems officer, Chad Underwood, to speak on the record for the first time. And he's the guy who got the infamous Nimitz Tic Tac UFO on his infrared targeting pod on the wing of his Super Hornet. And so, I've actively been reporting that and traveling around and filing Freedom of Information Act requests and editing audio. And hopefully that's coming out next year. And the other relatively big news that's in its germinal phases is that the conspiracy theory explainer subsite that I made for Gawker has been given back to me by the guy who bought Gawker, Brian Goldberg, owner of Bustle Digital Media Group. So at some point in the near future, Black Bag will be returning to do kind of news coverage this audience likes, I can guarantee. It's very much on the same wavelength.
And that'll be blackbag.com?
Hopefully. Okay. The guy who owns blackbag.com wants $64,000.
Really?
So I may have to find something else. But
theblackbag.com. How's that?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Problem solved. I just saved you $64,000.
Blackbag.com.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Okay, so we can find you at Twitter at CBMDP, which is Comic Book Matthew D. Phelan. Okay, because Phelan is spelled with a P. So if people want to get there and chip in for blackbag.com, they got tips for you about James O'Keefe or anything else you might be working on. This is a good guy to go to with the top secret info. Anything you want to leave us with?
I don't know. Keep fighting the good fight. And we'll talk off air about some stuff.
Yeah, hopefully we'll have you come back. There's a lot of things I know you're working on in the past, and we can't talk about everything. Matthew Phelan, check him out on Twitter. Once again, CBMDP. But you could find him. I closed my Twitter, but what's your Twitter called again? It's like Yep, something like that?
Oh, don't worry about that. If they've got the @ handle,
yeah.
The other one will probably change the moment.
Gotcha.
I'm sick of Blue Sky or Big Sky or whatever it's called.
Yeah, whatever it's called is true, right? It doesn't seem to be much activity over there, but I'm going to follow you. You follow me. I'm Ed Opperman on there. I'm Ed Opperman pretty much everywhere you look, except for one place. But everywhere you look, I'm Ed Opperman, CBMDP. Matthew Phelan, thank you so much. Great information on the James O'Keefe, shadier than I thought he was. Okay, keep an eye out for a Black Bag conspiracy blog from Matthew Phelan. Great content, bro. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much.
Thank you. Good night.
Take care.